Hello everyone, welcome to the Artefacto YouTube channel. My name is Jessica Bryant. Hope you enjoy this lesson. So I'm going to start the top. I'm just going to come across. I am using a different paper today. This is my Canson brand watercolor block. It is not as nice a paper as what I was using yesterday, so I am going to be dealing with differences in how this paint lays down. Excuse me. So if I'm bringing that blue across and I'm not sure I like the edge, I'm just going to make some little shapes in here that look sort of like shapes I see in there. And same here, I could take the opportunity to bring this down in little tiny bits in shapes that match like what we were doing yesterday in the last lesson. We were working on that large hillside and we were finding that there's these kind of vertical shapes. I'm seeing the same thing happening here. So I think that's a good starting place. I want to let that be, and I'm going to come down in here. Now here I want to be a little bit more careful. This is darker, but I'm not sure that I want the color change. And it comes in here. And I want to go around this rock shape. As soon as I can, I'm going to connect all of that and keep it horizontal. Now I want to look at how far down do I see this blue coming. The color down in here has kind of a haze to it, and that probably is an effect of it being a blend with the blue. So I might just add a little water to my brush and keep bringing this blue down, but I'll lighten it each time I come further down. And I will let that be part of the color in these rocks down here. Okay. Now, while that's drying, I don't want to put anything right next to that, so I might come to the interior section and look for an opportunity. Let's look at these greens coming across here. So I'm done with my sky color. These greens, there's a variety in there. I'm trying to work pretty quickly, so I'm going to look for opportunities to start with one color and just shift it a little bit instead of having to mix a whole bunch of different colors up front. This to me feels actually kind of close to what I have here. Pretty vivid green. I'm going to look for any place I see that color through here, and if it's not quite right, it's okay because we can adjust this later pretty easily. And I was focused, remember, on my values, so I don't have my color areas marked out. I have my value areas marked out. My color I'm less worried about, and I do want to put my reflections down in here as long as I'm doing these colors already. Now, some of that is more of a green instead of quite so yellow. That's easy enough to get to. We're just going to add a touch of blue. This is my cool blue into my cool yellow. And it looks, whoa, that's pretty strong. The phthalo colors are very strong. A little goes a very long ways. And that's a dark. I'm going to go ahead and put my green right over it, but it is going to be darker. But I see this color in here, so I'm just going to put it in there. For now, it might get covered up. That's okay. And do I see anything else that looks like what I currently have on my brush? No. But I might go back to just that yellow. I missed an area over here that I see in that color. And even if this didn't look that color, this might be one of those opportunities where I go ahead and use it anyways, just to have it happening across the page. I'm not even going to worry about the slight color differences I see happening there. I'm just going to skip those all together. Now I see a little bit of a more greenish grayishy green through there, which means if I am in yellow and blue already and it feels more gray, I need a touch of red.
Follow the link in the description and register for free. I really want everyone to succeed in painting. I hope my lessons will help you do that. Watercolor can be challenging. It requires thinking differently than in other painting mediums. Taking the time to plan your painting before you start can make the painting process feel easier and more enjoyable, and it really offers a chance to avoid some of the common struggles.
And we'll see where that gets us. It's also very light back in there. It's probably close enough to the look that I want. And I'm going to look around for other places where I see this kind of lighter grayish green happening. All through here. Using the tip of my brush to make sure I don't go back over the yellow I already have. Making sure I get my reflection where it should be. Okay, and I think I see some of this over here. And maybe the top of this is more yellow. The grass is kind of up here, but I'm just going to simplify and turn them into this greenish. Okay, that's pretty good. Let's keep going. We've got this grayish through here. Bluish, grayish, purplish. So I'm going to take a little of, I had the gray I had here, which is my, again, ultramarine and burnt umber. Going to make it a little bit more blue, and I want to pull in a touch of red, I think. A little bit more blue. I'm going to need to get some more blue on here. Again, my warm blue. That's closer. I want this pretty light. I'm going not for detail, just overall the value that I see through here. And that's maybe grayer than I wanted, and it's maybe not quite dark enough, so that's all right. Just going to pull up some of the extra moisture. As that starts to dry, I'll turn this a little bit more towards that purplish, bluish color I see in here. And we can drop that in and let the paint mix and give us a little variation. And then through here, it looks more pink to me. So I will pull in a little more red. Maybe I'll stick with this gray, but I'll pull in a little more red. It's a pretty light value. Again, doesn't have to be perfect here. We're going for an impression of the idea, a pretty loose, very quick, like a study we might do with very limited time on location. So we could sit and compare here and see where we're at. We can look just upside down, can be a great starting place. How close are we? Where are the values off? I could have gone a little bit darker through there, as I was afraid I would notice. Let's just do some of that. We could do it in splotches to get a sense of texture. Though if you do that, notice the style of shapes in the texture that they get narrower, thinner, smaller as they get further away, and larger and wider, taller as they get closer. And I probably really should have done definitely deeper value in here to help these rocks stand out from the water beneath. The water is definitely darker, but it has this more muted quality through here. So I did want to keep the sense of what was going on there. Now, handle the water one way over there. I've got to make sure I handle it similarly over here so that the whole piece feels consistent. It's a little bit more of a bluish happening down in here, as we noticed before. So where this should feel a little darker, bring it darker, but I want to make my color kind of match. So now I'm adding hints of texture through there, taking a little more paint off, going a little thinner in the shapes. I think that's close enough. That's as close as we're going to get without spending way too much time on this. Okay. We are going to take what we've been working on so far and apply it to a painting. Actually, we're going to do two different paintings. We're going to prepare to do a painting, and then we'll approach it from two different angles, just to offer some examples of the different ways we can simplify or add more detail, knowing that you all work in different styles and are maybe looking to explore a little bit. Some of you might be wanting to incorporate more detail in your work. Some of you might be wanting to, loosen up, as they say in watercolor. So we're going to talk about that. First off, we're going to prepare. This is going to look really familiar by now, I hope. This is the idea. So we've done a lot of these value studies, and as I've said, not everybody loves these. I don't. Honestly, I don't love them. Sometimes I skip that process, but I know that I'm in for more risk, or I need to supplement in some other way if I'm not going to do this preparation. So I am going to suggest this is really the best thing you can do. But if this is really challenging, you can think of alternatives that work for you. Practice these things, but even just this style of thought is really going to help a lot. So I've got my image printed out here, both in black and white and color. We're going to start by making sure that we're assessing the overall value structure in this piece the way we see it. So it looks like I need to sharpen my pencil just a little bit here. This is much more complex. You might remember from earlier when we did some quick studies with this one that it got a little bit tricky trying to show those large value shapes because there's just so much going on, especially in this area, that it got a little overwhelming and complicating to figure out how we might simplify that. That is why I chose this image. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but I will be here to help you walk through it. So first we're going to go back to, I know we already did this, but we're going to do this again. We're just going to do a quick establishing what we see happening here. All right. So if we're just looking at values, not subject matter, if we're going to do just 3 values, let's start there. Maybe this time we will mark out the lightest value. Oh, I didn't place that very well. Oh, this is wider. My aspect ratio is a little bit off. Something more like that. It's closer. Okay. So there's my lightest value. And it looks like, actually this area down here lines up almost as a mirror image with part of that. So here's another lightest area, which confusingly makes all these small shapes through here, which we're not going to get into too much detail. Lightest area. We've got some more lights through here. If this feels overwhelming, let's hold off. We'll come into that later. If something feels tough, look at the other things first and give yourself some structure in other places that can help make it easier to see what's happening in the more complex areas. So lightest light, lightest light. Darkest dark. Boy, this area is tricky, right? A lot of this is just kind of a dark gray. Not quite all the way dark, not quite right in the middle. It's kind of in between those two. So we need to make some choices in how we're going to simplify this for the purpose of what we're trying to do here. I think in this structure, The little bit of light, the kind of more mid-tone gray that comes through here might be a little bit important as a shape. I see that in here too, another area that's more gray, not quite as dark, and it kind of combines into these shapes a little bit. So I might say, and I see a small value separation here. I'm going to be exaggerating here. This is not what this looks like the way I would paint it, but I'm trying to see the underlying structure first. We'll get into the nuances of the values that we see a little bit later. So I'm going to call this area my darkest dark. I need to get darker yet, so I'm changing the angle on my pencil just so I can more easily push harder and get those darker values to come across. And if I change direction, I can get a little bit darker yet. Okay, there's some of my darkest dark. I think this shape really kind of works into this. If I'm calling this darkest dark, maybe I'll call this my middle gray. This area is my middle gray. This is almost in between the darkest dark and middle gray. I need to make a choice. For understanding the structure this time around, I'm going to choose to call this a darkest dark. I think that'll help me keep track of where I am. Okay. This area, I think, also can be considered a darkest dark right through there. And we do have these small shapes. These couple areas closest to us, I think, are going to be fairly important. One, they offer some balance with the visual weight. The dark feels a little heavier. So I'm going to come across there, and I'm just going to do a few of these. I don't want to do too much through here. Okay, this probably reads a little bit darker as well, but I'm simplifying. I'm going to make that one large shape instead of all the little detail I see in there. As I squint, it's pretty easy to lose the detail through there. And maybe this is another darkest dark. Okay, now my middle grays. All of this I think is going to be a middle gray. This was all a middle gray down here. And I'd marked off my lightest light, so I'm going to trust that and bring my middle gray right up to that area. And I didn't really map the difference between darkest dark and lightest light over here. What I see here is in this area, it's a pretty strong light versus dark in these shapes. But once we get into this area, those lights really tone down. They're not nearly as bright. So I don't think I have any lightest lights through here, but there are some here. So I can look at this overall shape and say that my middle gray is going to need to go around that. Hope that makes sense. This is middle gray. A lot of this down below here looks middle gray to me. And if I had to pick, I guess I would call this area my lightest light as well. It's not as bright, but again, we're simplifying. Light, all the way dark, and right in the middle. So this is a very simplified version of what's happening here. Okay, now if we were to make this more nuanced and introduce 5 values, then what might we see? If we were looking at 5 values here, then our lightest light is probably going to be similar in structure there and in here, like we saw before. I might still call what's happening in this area, or might include that in some of the lightest lights. I'm not sure, so I'm just going to make a little mark to block off this shape to help me remember that. And we had this area coming across. This shape connects something a little bit lighter through there. Where are we? This is my lighter light. It kind of connects into It's a beautiful place to show the example of subject matter and value not necessarily being separated in the same way as each other. We've got, this is rocks and this is trees, but if you look at this value shape coming across, the large value shape, this is all one, this area is all one nice, pretty consistent value from a distance. But we're changing subject matter through here. There's trees and there's rocks. But really, they read very similar, even in texture, very similar. And if you pull your image away from you a little bit, especially if you go across the room, you won't be able to tell exactly where the rocks and trees meet each other. So this is a place where really it's the value that matters. I mean, every place is like that. Who am I kidding? So we've got those. That was our main structure we were starting with here. Now, if we have 5 values, now this gets a little bit more interesting, right? Still have to pick our darkest darks. Darkest darks get to be a little bit more complex in shapes. I still see a shape down here that feels like a darkest dark. See a shape through here that feels like a darkest dark. This right through here is pretty dark. I've got some in here. I don't want to get too small. I'm still trying to think about large value masses, but if we're giving ourselves more different values, those masses are going to get smaller, right? Because we're using 5 different values instead of 3, we're going to have more shapes. I would call this one of our darkest darks, and through here, like before, maybe in here. I'm not really exact here. I know that when I go to paint my finished, I can be more accurate in my drawing and placement of these shapes. If drawing is a struggle for you, this is a great opportunity here to practice getting your shapes and your drawing really accurate. And each time you do this, you'll be getting more practice with that. I'm more, you're watching me, I'm a little bit in a hurry because I want to keep this interesting, because this part you're probably just watching, not so much painting along. I just want to point that out so that you're not thinking my pacing and my style is really the right way you're supposed to do this. And there's some shapes in here that are darker that come across. I'm not thinking about subject matter. I am really just looking at this as abstract shapes. I've trained myself how to see that way, and I would encourage you to work really hard at doing that yourself. It really makes so many things easier. And again, if we're going to get into darkest darks, is this going to read as one shape, or are we going to have some more complex shapes happening through there? So let's pause a minute and think this through. If our sky is the lightest light, and down here is lightest light, what is our, and maybe we should figure out where our mid value is. I think this area looks like the most middle value in here, the most in between the lightest light and darkest dark. So let's call our lightest light a 1. Let's call our middle gray a 3. And let's call our darkest darks here a 5. So we're looking for where is a 2 and where is a 4. What's the difference between all the way light versus light gray?
I hope this video is helpful for you. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we assist all individuals in mastering the skills of painting and immersing themselves in the wonderful world of art. Don't forget to follow the link in the video description and register for my course. See you there soon.